Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to We Built an Empire. I'm your host, Kyle Wolff. In today's episode, we talk to a dear friend of mine who's an actor, a rock climber specializing in off-width climbing, the mind behind Theater of the Wild with his recent production, 1 Mile Wide. And it's my pleasure to bring you Mike Largent.
Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
Mr. Mike Largent, how are you, sir?
So good.
Good. I'm glad to have you on, man. Yeah, it's good to see your face, even though it's in a digital capture screen right now. It's
yeah, hey, yours too. It looks kind of like I remember it.
Yeah, it's changed. I mean, it fluctuates through the years. Some years it's fat and then it gets slimmer depending on my attitude. But I've got the camera angle kind of a little higher. I think maybe in a couple of months I'll be able to elongate it to show my physique.
Ooh.
But we're working on that, Mike.
Sure.
I just got a brand new pair of shoes yesterday. It's the first.
I'm pretty sure that's all you need.
Well, you only need one, but yeah, my previous Hokas are they you could see my both right toes clearly, my right toe knuckle, and then the heel I could push through and feel the insole. So it's like it's time. Like these at one time they were great for 4 years.
You can only call that ventilation for so long.
Yeah, it was nice though. I typically run barefoot. I don't know I don't run barefoot, but I have no socks on in my running shoes. I just like the way it feels better. And I had to start wearing socks because just so much gravel would get in the holes while I was running that it would just, I was like, man. And then I tried a little bit of
exfoliating.
Yeah, it was good. You know, it's good to have road rash after a run every morning, you know. But no, in a weird way, I was messing around like a year ago, and I was pulling my dog on the longboard, on Jonah's longboard. And I had a drink in hand, like totally messing around. And he does like the classic poof, like dart after a cat mode, like pulling him on the leash on the longboard, going down Sauceman, like, here we go. Boom, like launch off. I'm in sandals to boot. And I plant so hard with my left foot. It was like, I thought it was a stone bruise, and it was. But shortly thereafter, got like the worst bat of plantar fasciitis ever. You know, I had never had that. And it seems like most people talk about it like, oh, come on, you fucking wimp, you know, plantar fasciitis.
It's not the cakewalk I always imagined it would be.
It was the worst thing ever. Like, no joke. Like but like full on half days where you're like hobbling, like, cause you cannot walk until you get those tendons moving. And so I'm finally starting to run again after rehabbing it, and it still hurts like every day. I just kind of think I mentally just stopped caring about it.
I didn't know that you were ever a runner, or that you are currently.
I like to run. I think it's kind of it's good for me mentally. Like just go do 3 miles and like work out whatever's in your head. But Dr. Dan, the chiropractor here, Dan McClure, in Bayfield, he is always like, I'll go in and get adjusted. He's like, "Are you still running?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You are not a runner. Like, you're not designed to be a long distance your body's not built like this. It's doing damage." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's good for my head." You know, I really enjoy it. So, you know, I did run, like, especially while we were in Texas, I was running every day, you know, between 5 and 10 miles, and it's just good. So the long story short is, like, I physically could not run for at least 8 months, and it sucked. But I just started kind of getting back into it and got some help at the running store here in town. Got some really good insoles, and then just doing rehab on this. And it hurts less. I don't think it's ever going to go away. Like, I've talked to a lot of people that are like, "Yeah, I mean, you could baby it." But then you start to kind of like, all of a sudden, like my right hip's hurting. Cause I'm like, you know, I'm purposely like not planting how I should be. You know, but
like growing weird muscles in weird places.
So it's, but yeah, and I went on a run this morning with those brand new shoes, and that's awkward because I'm so used to running in shit shoes that now that feels weird. So I probably got 2 or 3 weeks to adjust to a new set of soles below me. So
just no winning out there.
No, and I'm not running, mountains like you. I'm just a flatlander. I'm just one of those dudes that just runs on, a sidewalk. But
Oh,
it's still
then your experience doesn't matter. There's no value to this story.
yeah. We'll cut all of this. We're starting from here. Thank you. So, how have you been, man?
Oh, dude, I've been good.
Good. Awesome.
Yeah.
I heard that you recently just got married. Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
pretty amazing.
Yeah, people are like, "How's married life?" I'm like, "I have a ring now." It's pretty similar. I
Yeah.
get to use the word wife. That's pretty new. That feels a little like I'm. It's starting to feel comfortable to use the word wife.
Yeah, there. Did you? When I asked Simone to marry me, for one, it was immediately like, "Are you fucking crazy?" And I was like, "Is that a yes or no?" And it's like, I don't think I got an answer for a few days later. But she, you
That
did you
was her
have?
first response was, "Are you fucking crazy?"
Oh yes. So I was working oil and gas. I was electrician doing, and so everybody, even on jobs where I was managing 30 or 40, like everybody's in their mid 30s at that time. And I'm 19, right? Or 20 or something, and everybody's like mid 30s, 40s, 50s. And they've always got all the answers for you, right? Like do this and do that. And they've been married and they probably hate their marriage, but
Yeah.
they're telling you
Yeah.
all the things that you have to do and should do. And so I've never been one for following directions real well. So I went out with the very little bit of money that I did have and bought a ring, I think from like Zales or whatever that shit was in the mall. And I get as far from the mall to, for the listeners, this will not make any sense, but either way, I get from there to where, Office Max is, which is less than a mile. And I pull over and the ring is like burning a hole in my pocket. And I'm just like, I'm freaking out. I've got anxiety. I'm like, oh God. And at that time, Simone and I had only been dating for 8 or 9 months, and so I just went and bought a wedding ring. I'm like, what the fuck? So I get the harebrained idea to pull over in front of the Napa. There's also a Napa auto parts store in this same little commercial complex. I pop the hood and I like disconnect the battery and I call her. I'm like, hey, my van broke down. Can you come meet me? And this is just like rapid fire. Like I had no intention of doing this. I wanted to go like hike up Piedra and go to a waterfall and make it all beautiful. But I'm freaking out. I'm like suffering from like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing in life, And so she comes down there to give me a ride home or something. And I'm like, can you just look at this while I'm trying to like start this thing? And like, so she's up there, like no idea what she's looking at. There's nothing wrong with my vehicle. The hood has just popped up and I walk around and I'm like on one knee in the Napa parking lot, like, will you marry me? And she looks at me like blank face and I have no idea what's going through her brain. And I stand up and I'm like, what do you, and she just gives me a big hug and then like steps away and is like, literally like, are you fucking serious? And I'm like, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've got the ring. I just was on one knee and like, I imagine all of her dreams of somebody
and I
asking her
planned this romantic Napa parking lot proposal.
Yeah. So,
hold on, let me go back. Am I making up this detail that you disconnected the battery?
Oh no, that was yes, full on. Yes, I'm like, I got to make this. I have to sell the story. Something's got to be wrong, right?
She's gonna be on to me if she realizes that it actually starts.
Yeah. So she still says, even after, are you fucking crazy? And I'm like, yes. She still gives no answer and just like gives me a big hug. So anyone I think can imagine like your heart just falling through your anus, being like, what? Oh God, is that a no? It wasn't a yes. It wasn't a no. It wasn't even a maybe. And that night, so we drove in 2 separate cars home because nothing was wrong with my vehicle. And we lived with, 4 or 5 different people in like a college house. And so there was somebody who was throwing a party, and so it's like we go in there, we get ready. And like later that night at like, probably like 6 hours afterwards, I'm like, so is it what are you? And she's like, yes, I'll marry. And I'm like, whoo. And then like, but we didn't announce it to like the whole party. Cause a lot of these people like I mean, we didn't even know them. They were just friends of our friends. And so it's like, I think we told a couple of like close friends and it was like, oh my God, but, so, oh my God. So,
6 hours later. So was there any conversation between the proposal and 6 hours later when you were like, do you remember?
I mean, probably like, hey, what do you think of this outfit? Because like, oddly enough, like this is the weird deal. So it was a Pimps and Hoes party. So everybody was dressed up, in like 80s swag with like, I think I had a mock, like huge clock around my neck with a monster chain, like, one of the 80s rappers. I can't remember his, Flavor Flav.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so everybody was like in Adidas gear, like borderline Russian looking. And so it was hilarious. And so it was like, probably, does my outfit look okay? Like, are you asking me if you look somewhat like a hoe? Yeah, sure. Yeah. Like that kind of, and then like, standing there with like a red Solo cup or probably a beer being like, how's it going? Like everybody's like, yeah, man, what have you been up to? Like in my mind, I'm like, I just proposed and didn't get an answer. I'm kind of freaking out. so,
Yeah.
so it was, and probably too to her, she's like, this guy is wildly asking me to marry him after, being with him for 8 months. And, here we are 15 years later, but either way, it worked out. So do you mind if I ask you how you popped the question? Was it,
Not at all. Not
yeah.
at all. I'd been getting hints, that's the direction she wanted it to go.
From her or from your parents?
From her.
Oh, okay.
So that made my job super easy.
Did she like buy a wedding ring and like place it in your cupboard or something?
Well, she proposed to me. No, she just said, what were the hints? She was just like, yeah, like when we get married, like she would drop little things like that here and there. Am I freezing up?
You are, but let's keep rolling, man. I'm going to go with the conversation. So we good.
Cool. So yeah, she had been dropping these little hints. I gotten in touch with her sister. We got like in cahoots about like what ring she would like. I called her parents and like did the whole ask their blessing thing. And then we were in the creek, which is where we normally go to like climb and hang out and all that stuff. And she had been mentioning that she wanted to do something different, like climb a tower. And for like an event like this, I chose a tower that was like not hard to climb, because there's already enough stuff going on. And she was stoked to do something else because I'm always in the creek, in the cracks, and she's usually stoked for that. But yeah, she was stoked to do something else. So we drove out of the creek. We went to a place called Looking Glass Rock, and we were there like as the sun was coming up. What she didn't know was that two of my good friends, Bryce and Graham, had gone up in the dark and brought up like a bouquet of flowers. They like arranged it in a circle on the summit of this very easy rock climb. And they had like a backpack up there. I put like a couple options of like dresses for her in there, and I put a nice shirt in there for me. I had a beanie on, and I stashed the ring inside that beanie. I never climbed. Yeah. That was probably could have brought that detail up later. But so it's in my hat, and I always climb with a helmet. I never climb with a fucking beanie. But she was just like, it's cold. She didn't think anything of it. We got to the top. She saw them. There was also randomly a pile of like 6 to 10 randos up there. This is like a large summit. It's like maybe a quarter of a football field is the size of the top of this rock. And they're like in sleeping bags. They're waking up. And she goes up there and she sees Bryce and Graham. And she's like, well, hey guys. I think she started to figure out what was happening. But I was like, you know how you always complain that we never have good pictures together? Well, here's your late birthday present. So we start like posing, and my two friends are taking fucking like iPhone pictures, right? And she's like, take your hat off for the picture. It's like, yeah, no, no, don't. It's like you're
I
gonna
love it.
ruin the thing. You already
I
know
love
it's
this
coming.
beanie.
Yeah, I think I look so cool in this thing. It's like this black sock on my head. It's not a good looking beanie. So I'm like, yeah, wait, no. But finally, um, they take some pictures, and I'm like, okay, I'll take this thing off. So I take off the beanie. It has my headlamp, and I pull out a little box, and I opened it up. I got on a knee, and I just like I just wanted to soak up her reaction. If you ask her the story, she'll tell you that I forgot the line, but I so it's hard. Who knows? Who knows what
Yeah.
was really happening there? But I was on a knee for like a bit too long before she was like, "Is that for me?" And I was like, "If you'll have it," which in my brain was the question, you know. Oh, it was the whole fucking thing was so awkward. If you'll have it, she was like, "Well, then, is there something you want to ask me?" And I was like, "Will you marry me?" You know. She's like, yes! And the whole, like, the bunch of randos, they start applauding. We later, like, get airdropped videos that they took, and they're just watching, filming. They're like, these two are so awkward. Oh, this is so painful to watch. I love it. So they got, like, this NASCAR wreck while they're camping on the summit.
That's awesome. That's a little bit more of interest than the Napa parking lot.
It's true.
That's
It's
so
true.
cool, man. Yeah.
It was
And
good.
you guys got married in, was it Silverton or was it Telluride? Where was, I saw a lot of the photos, but.
Yeah, just north of Silverton.
Oh, cool. Was
At
that
this
like is that like Kendall Mountain or was it further like off the beaten path?
It was further. It's like a well-established wedding venue, but they're up there, like in the Alpine.
Hmm.
Her family was coming from Boston, and so they were like, you know, if you're going to make us come to Colorado, you better make it a destination wedding. So that meant like my brother's ranches were off the table, and we sprung for like the proper thing.
That's cool. Yeah, it turned out super beautiful. At least from the photos. Did you guys do a little retreat or honeymoon after, or did you just that was it?
We did. We called it a mini moon. Like next year we'll go on an actual honeymoon, which is like we're deciding between Patagonia and Switzerland. But the mini moon was was in Vidavoo, Wyoming, which is like it's appealing to a really strange crowd.
Yeah.
You have like rednecks and Texans. You have redneck climbers. You have off-width climbers. But it's not like gorgeous territory. There's much prettier things. And
Well, speaking of Vidavoo, that might actually kind of be a good transition. I want to, definitely want to get you on here to talk about what you got upcoming. But there's a huge backstory, I think, to this next monster climb, and I will not, bastardize that by even remotely talking about what you're coming up. We'll get to that, but we had kind of exchanged some things the other day, and you sent me. I don't know that I had seen it, but you sent me a clip, just like, hey, just to sort of catch up on what I've been doing, and it was your Theater of the Wild production for 1 Mile Wide. So I got a chance to check that out. If anybody hasn't seen that and you're hearing this, go absolutely check it out. But it was really good. I was I shouldn't say surprised, because I think that, obviously, what you're doing when it comes to acting and compiling that, but it was just interesting. It was so different. I don't know how much time it took you to think about, obviously you made the climb, and then you compiled this thing, which is, this compilation of data that, creating that story, and it was only a 45-minute short, which probably took hours and eons to build and write and put together in that fashion so you could record it. But it was really, really good, Mike. So my hat's off to you on that. But I want to get a little bit better understanding of how you came up with the concept. I mean, I haven't seen all the rest of the videos on the Theater of the Wild production that you've got going. I know that there's been 2. This is the 3rd episode now, right? Or I don't know if it's episodes, but
Yeah.
third movie or 3rd production.
3rd production.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So how did you, how did you come up with the idea to at least as far as the 1 mile wide thing? When did you, like, was it just like you had this concept in your head for years and you wanted, like, okay, I've got this idea of how the production could be laid out, and then boom, climbing falls into it. Can you explain how you kind of came up with that thought process around, I'm going to do a production that talks about this climb that I just did that was fucking insane, and then, bringing that all together in a theatrical performance,
Yeah, I could talk about that. So I was in grad school studying theater and acting, and it was hard to like not daydream and think about climbing and being in the mountains. So Theater of the Wild was created to like just make me a more whole person. Instead of like trying to compartmentalize my life, I just married the 2 worlds. And so the model for creation is like do something that pushes me outside and then create a piece of theater about it. The idea for a 1 mile wide came from so in the first sort of episode, the first piece of theater, and actually you're not missing out because the other 2 are not recorded, they're not online. In the first one, I kind of tell my story. In the second one, I'm in the story, but it's about these 3 college students who go with me to Nepal. And in this one, it's my story, but it's my story with the intention of helping the community. So, the idea was to do this thing that I'm already kind of psyched on and already is like kind of in my wheelhouse, and just take it to the nth degree. So real quickly, the format, the framework was that I was climbing 1 mile of off-width in 1 month. Up to that point, the most like pitches I had led in a day in Indian Creek was 4, and that was 4 non-off-width pitches. So with some math, I figured, it'd be really hard for me to do 4 pitches 3 days in a row and do that for an entire month. And then the creation of should I go into sort of how that thing was created?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and too, if you can, especially for the listeners and myself included, give us a little bit of detail on what exactly off-width is, if you don't mind. Off-width climbing, because I'm no climber. I'm barely a flatland runner here.
Totally. So like, listen here, Flatlander. You have rock climbing, and then you have crack climbing, and then you have off-width climbing. It's like just a further niche. So I tell people when they go from climbing to crack climbing, they have to relearn how to climb. And then when they go from crack climbing to off-width climbing, they have to relearn how to climb. Crack climbing, I'll start there, is like there's a crack in a rock, you shove body parts in, and you pull and you push yourself to the top of that crack or to wherever the chains are. In an off-width crack, that crack is wider than a fist, so you're jamming. In a hand crack, for example, you're jamming with your hand kind of in a karate chop looking fashion. And then as it gets wider, you cup, and then as it gets wider still, you turn that cup into a fist, and the fist is what holds you in. But when it's wider than a fist, it's considered off-width. That's hard because it takes 2 hands to hold you in. And so to release both hands at once, you still have to stay on the wall and you have to stay up. So you have to, with just your legs, you have to push yourself up and keep yourself in. Before you learn the technique, it's just like a lot of flexing big muscle groups really hard, desperately, and bleeding and cursing a lot. So that's off width. It's like not a popular style.
Yeah, sure. And I think a lot of the pictures I see, you've got like, it looks like carpet around your hands, just like so much fucking tape and like elbow pads and knee pads. And it makes you just want to like scream like, ouch, like that.
Yeah.
This doesn't look good.
Totally. Yeah. You need to be like very armored up from head to toe. Tape. We wear sleeves. We wear knee pads.
Can you, I know that it's kind of just food for thought here, but I know that there's like a ton of climbing gyms where people go in and practice. Maybe it's face climbing, crack climbing, but how do you practice off width? Is there gyms that they have segments inside where you can be practicing? Is it like in the field, the real life experience? This is how you practice off width climbing.
There are some gyms, like especially in Salt Lake City, they have some wide cracks, but I'm finding that the traditional way to do it, the way that most people do it, is they do crack bouldering, which is like, it doesn't get much higher than like maybe 12 feet off the ground. So if you fall, you're just falling that little bit onto a crash pad. There's no rope. That's how most people learn. But I learned by just going and doing it. There was certainly not a gym that had off width.
Yeah.
I knew how to crack climb, and I had watched some YouTube videos, and I had cams that like kept me safe as I figured this stuff out. But yeah.
So when did you know that you were going to attempt to do a mile of off width? Like, had you been thinking about it, considering it for a while, or was it just you woke up one morning and be like, I'm gonna fucking do this?
Yeah, pretty much. Like I had been thinking about something. I needed to do something, and I had been thinking about that for a while. It was time for another Theater of the Wild piece to come out, and I wasn't sure what was going to fit that bill. Like I thought it was going to be some running feat, but I kind of fell out of love with running and in love with climbing, and so like it was probably maybe a week, maybe 3 days before May of 2021, I reached out to Alex Vick with The Hive. That's a nonprofit in Durango. And I told him, I'm gonna climb a mile of off width to raise money for The Hive. And that's when I was really committed. I think I had been sort of like, I might not. Like, I don't like telling the public until I believe that it's possible.
Sure.
Because, that just seems silly. Now I've done one, and I'm about to try two, and I don't know that it's possible, but having done one, I feel qualified to tell the public that I'm going to try two.
Yeah. When do you start on that attempt? I guess I hate to call it an attempt, but either way, you're attempting this feat. When do you plan to day one?
October 1st.
Nice. And so you're partnering again as far as from a raising money donation stance with the Hive again, or do you have another entity that you're doing this for?
No, it's for the Hive again.
I'm curious. So I was thinking about this, and like we'll get into this in a little bit. Obviously, you are also an actor by trade, but these performances, these massive feats that you're doing, whether it's running 14ers or climbing 1 mile or 2 miles of off width, it seems like you typically couple them with something, either raising money for something X. It seems like a very selfless act, where I
I
think a lot of others may not be willing to do it for that. So what makes you different in the sense that, I mean, like you could easily do this, make a video, maybe hire a production company and release this as like Mike Largent, the baddest motherfucker on the planet. So like, why do you, from a thought perspective, why partner, or why do this for kind of quote unquote the greater good? What drives you to do that?
uh, well, I think I think that like I really believe in like everybody wins scenarios, and I think that like I can do this, and like maybe I could, get some big viral YouTube video production out of it, but more likely I won't, because there are people like, this is a lot, and it's quite a feat, and no one will ever try to repeat it. No one will ever try to repeat 1 mile, let alone 2. But it's also not like the sexy thing. I'm not like doing a lot of inverts. I'm not climbing 514. It's I think what I'm hoping people perceive this as is just like his community, like yeah. It's I guess I also I like, so the thing, the people behind the Hive were inspired to create the Hive partly because of like mutual friends of ours who we've lost to addiction and stuff, and so this is like my way of helping prevent that, hopefully, in like a couple of humans who are currently being brought up in Durango.
Sure, I can definitely align with that. Yeah, sorry, I just kind of had to take a moment to think about that for just a second. That's pretty awesome, Mike. I mean, again, I think that that's a very selfless way to kind of go about this. It's highly not selfish. And I think that by you partnering with the Hive, especially with that outlook, because you are correct. I was just talking to an individual the other day that works with the county. I don't know when that episode's going to air, but we were talking about the same thing. It's like, it was like one a year, for the last 5 years. And it's just, obviously that tonality was in your video, the 1 mile wide, but I think that it's a great thing. And if you can give a person an opportunity, because there's not a whole lot of opportunities around here maybe there's not a whole lot of opportunities. Like, this is a beautiful area to be. There's tons of outside activities. There's tons of indoor activities. It's a great place to live and be a part of a community, but it's also easy, depending on the crowd and the community you associate with, to fall into the negative aspects of this area, whether that's drug or alcohol or depression or anxiety. And so we were just talking about that, and it kind of brought it really to the forefront. And it's a reality, when you lose people close to you that you've known your whole life. And so there's a lot of things happening on a county level, where hopefully they're trying to remodel Denier to be specifically youth driven towards mental health, drug and alcohol abuse, depression, things like that. So I think that it's a very honorable thing that you're doing this to partner with the Hive, to kind of give back to them, because I think it's a great outlet for kids, and hopefully we can use this to promote that, as best we can. So that's
I want to be totally explicitly clear on something here too. It's not totally selfless. Like, I 100% want to be stupid famous from doing this, but I can say that now without shame or embarrassment because, like, given my history, I know that I'll do good things with that power. I have like the power to climb off with really well, and I'm using that to do good. So anyway, it's I don't know. I'm very uncomfortable with like accepting any kind of martyrdom or any kind of like community leadership position. I would like to believe that I'm like in a morally neutral ground where I win, the hive wins, and you know, like I can say I know this from the 1 mile. Even though, so we raised some money and that helps the hive, but almost better than that were like all these new climbing partnerships that came from it, all these new friendships that came from it, like all these people leveled up their off-width game because of it. And I think it also changes a perception of the game itself, the off-width game itself. You know, like everyone will think about everyone who climbs crack. They'll think about climbing a pitch of off-width and they're like, well, that's probably about all I got for the day. Maybe not.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe you got a lot more in there.
A little more feeling to take. What is that in your video? You I forget exactly what it was like a, you know, obviously you're like doing a theater performance and it's like a tote of something. It's some meal, but I imagine it's just packed with anything and everything. It's like you said, you eat 2 of those in a day if you're doing like so many pitches.
Yeah. Turkey, avocado, pickle, hummus, mayo, pepper jack.
Yeah. So maybe somebody gets back down from their first pitch and they're like, this sucks. And be like, oh, Bink, eat something like that. I can do another one. I'm not a total wimp. Mike did it. Why can't I do it?
Right? No, that's all you need. Your sodium and your fat, your protein. It just like, yeah. I mean, and I see it out there a lot too. Is like people, they'll bring like a bar and some gorp, you know, and expect to fucking perform normally. But it's like, maybe one day you can sort of starve yourself like that. But if you're stacking days and stacking pitches like this, like bring real fucking food.
Yeah, for sure. No, and I mean, back to your comment, I you know, I think that everybody can, and obviously you mentioned it, like this isn't a completely selfless act. Like, yes, you do want to grow yourself. You do want to grow the sport. You do want to grow off with specifically. I just think that when somebody, I mean, even this podcast, this is, you know, at times this podcast is very selfish for me to get to talk to people that I haven't talked to for a while, for me to hear stories, for me to grow from it, for me to learn. But at the other time, you know, I do want to prop up guests, right? I'm a very, very much, you know, rising tide lifts all boats. I think that there's enough negative assholes in this world that you don't need that. So it's like, if you're determined to be that person that you can use something and, you know, yes, I would love for this podcast to take off. That'd be amazing. I would be so excited because then I could talk to different guests and I could talk to, you know, and it would just be awesome. And that's absolutely selfish. But at the same time, you know, there is the selfless side where it's like, you know, a friend of mine is starting up a new podcast, or a friend of mine's doing this, or, you know, a friend of mine is doing this insane fucking climb out in Indian Creek. So yes, absolutely. Like I don't think that anybody's ever completely selfless. There's always something in it for you. Even if it's just like accomplishment of like, I did that. And like, I get to step back and say, fuck yeah, I did that. And so I don't think that anybody would say, you know, oh, Mike is a selfish asshole. And, he's just, you know, saying, let's donate to the hive because he wants to succeed. I don't think that that's what people are going to see out of it. And for anybody that's like, that could say, I would do this and, I would do it completely selflessly. Okay, cool. Well, then do that. And then what you need to do is verbally crowdsource all the funds. And then you do the climb, never take a single photo. And then the only person that knows you did it are the people that are on the ground with you. And then maybe that person could go, okay, that was a selfless act. but that's a lot of rock to climb to do that.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot, and it doesn't have as much of a ripple effect. Like the people who I'm doing, like, it's the same way I look at social media. You know, like, this is a big other topic, but like, I want to post pictures because I know that some people will see those pictures and be like, I'm inspired to do things, you know, instead of like, oh, my life's not like that. Like, there's a part of everybody that I'm appealing to. I know it because it's a part of me. Like, I'll get off of social media when I'm like, oh, my life's not like that. You know, there's like, I think there's a healthy way to operate in the world, and like, yeah.
So that's going to start October 1st. What are you doing this, trying to do this in a month? Like you did with
1
1
month.
mile? God damn, Mike. I wish you well.
Thank
I
you.
don't even want to lie. That's going to suck, but I'm going to be rooting for you the entire time. That's, yeah, brutal, man. So I do, I can imagine. Yeah. Sorry. I'm just going to pre-apologize. Sorry. Those rocks are going to tear you up, man. It's going to explode. No. Are you climbing any of the same, what was the rock? Oh, dude, it made me laugh so hard. Is it Fat Sally or Fat? There's like a section of rock. It was like, and like you had a huge moment about Fat Sally. And I was like, I kind of want to meet this bitch. Like, what's she all about? Yeah. I don't know. I'm much like my body may not be built for running. I don't know that my body is also built for climbing. I'm short, stocky, somewhat look like a T-Rex with shorter, stubbier arms with thick thighs. I don't think I'm built for it, Mike. Maybe a climbing gym where there's a mat below me.
You might be. It's maybe your body is like robust enough to put up with off-width though. Like, there's this one climbing legend. His name is Bob Scarpelli. I haven't met him in person, but from what I gather, he's like a stockier, shorter fella.
Oh, because the width of your physical makeup?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of like speculation as to like what makes a good climber body. And with face climbing, and even with crack climbing, we pretty much know what makes a good body objectively. Yeah. But with off-width, it's really, really hard to say. Because like what I can fit a knee in, you cannot. But you can fit a knee in where I have to do a different technique. So basically there are like easier and harder techniques, and those are determined by your body size. And
yeah.
Point is, who fucking knows, Kyle? You got to come try it.
Yes, I do. Maybe I'll start something easier. Fat Sally sounded like a son of a bitch. So maybe
it's not the climb you want to start on.
Well, maybe one of these days I will take you up if you guys are going to the creek and just see what it's all about. I'm sometimes down for just destroying my body to see if I can actually still do things in life. So.
Fuck yeah, dude.
So when did you, having known you for years and years and grown up somewhat together, we've always kind of, just friends have always kind of known that you had a talent for acting and at school and this, and, you kind of just have that charismatic value about you, right? Whether it's at a party or whether it's out in public, and, at a moment's notice, it could be like, Mike is doing this piece, this bit, this reel. So we kind of have always known that you were going to chase after that, seeing that was kind of your dream. But when did you, I know that you went to school for acting. I'm not sure what type of acting you learned or studied there, but when did you, I guess, start acting more with intention of becoming an actor as a profession?
Most recently, because I've kind of come and gone with it. But yeah, I'll waste a little bit of time diving into this. Like, that sets it up as this like black and white, either I'm going as a professional or I'm going to do other things with my life, there's a lot of like gray area and nuance, and that's like maybe a three-dimensional scale that tips and is complicated, but I will reduce it for the sake of this conversation. Like this. I definitely was like, it's on. It's game time. I'm going to be a professional in 2010 when I moved out to Los Angeles. And then the complexity of life and my own depression, my own alcoholism, and my own bullshit is what I've come to realize it all sprinkled its way into my existence and my life. And but I can tell you now that I've come full circle to realize that all of that complication was my own bullshit, and I'm now again pursuing acting as a professional.
How
that started like January of this year.
how much time did you take away from acting? Because you were in LA for how long were you there? A couple of years? 3 years?
The first time I was there for like 9 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so how much of a break did you take kind of before you came? I mean, had you kind of just like written it off like for yourself? Like, I chased this, maybe let other people talk you out of it, this dream. And then January, you came into this realization, like, I love this. So like what, you know what I mean? How much of a break did you take from it?
Sure. It's hard to say that I ever really took a break, because even between those times I was doing theater, and I was teaching theater, and I even went to grad school thinking I was going to teach college level theater. And then after grad school, I taught college level theater as an adjunct, lowest of the low, barrel scrapers and suckerfish. But how long did I take? So that was 8 months after 2010 until January of this year. And that math is hard for my brain. 12 years?
I'm not good at math. I think it's 4 years.
It's about 11, somewhere around 11 years I took.
To kind of go from there to come to here. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that's, I would imagine is really hard to kind of hold on to. I mean, because, I can only try and correlate this in my brain to playing music, like in a band or playing music. Like if you don't do it, if you're not practicing, or I'm not sure in the acting profession, if it's called practicing or constantly doing it and bettering yourself. And in that frame of thought, I would think that it would be something that's kind of, if you take too long of a break or even a short break and you decide to get back into it, then there's like this learning curve, or maybe it's not a learning curve, but I would think that you would be missing a step. Did you ever kind of feel like that, like in and out of these breaks? And did you have to kind of like, okay, this is, it takes a couple of, failed auditions to be like, okay. And then we're talking to each other in the mirror. And, did you kind of experience anything like that?
Not so much, because my break was filled with a lot of school and a lot of acting. It just, okay. I think, so I should define what I mean when I say like committing to the profession of acting. I mean like moving to Los Angeles and really, really working other jobs only so that I can afford acting classes and acting, etc., like workshops with casting directors. In the interim, I had been keeping the muscles strong, with theater and with grad school. So if anything, I'm like a more capable actor than I was before the break. I think, had I known the whole time that I was going to just go back to Los Angeles, I might have, there's one class I definitely would have taken. And there's there's more like camera technique, and I would have done things differently for sure.
Sure.
But the engine behind acting itself has never been stronger.
That's good. That's really awesome. Is there, so I imagine, like that's obviously the, I wouldn't say quintessential, but I think that a lot of people feel like, or almost have to, go on this grand trip to LA, or at least they feel like they have to, and grind and work and have 4 jobs to afford to live out there to be doing auditions. If anybody's listening to this, and they feel like they're driven towards acting, or they desire to kind of do that as a profession or even dabble in it. Can you give us the reality of what that looks like? Because, and the reason I ask you that, and I asked a good friend of ours, Justin Roberts, this the other day about his career, because we all went to a school, and the school is great. It gives you a sort of a fundamental knowledge of what you're going to be doing or what you need to be doing in the real world. But then you get into the real world and shit is flipped 110% onto its ear. And it's kind of eye opening. And thankfully he was able to kind of literally grind his way to where he's at now. So if you can you just kind of give some like harsh reality of like, this is what you can expect. This is the real world out there, coming from personal experiences. Like, can you give us just a little bit in case somebody's thinking along those lines?
Totally. The reality is that no amount of schooling and no amount of connections are going to replace just good old fashioned work ethic. If working hard is a habit and a thing that one does on a regular basis, they'll have a much better time moving into the profession of acting. The other thing I would say is that it would behoove one to expand what they see as success, because the Brad Pitts, the Robert Downey Jr.'s, they're the exception. And I don't know what the numbers are. I should check the numbers, but it's a ridiculously small percentage of actors who are currently working. And then you take an even smaller sliver of that, and those are the actors that anyone's heard of. So, I would say it'd be good just to taper expectations and know that it's a long career. It's like something that has to be tended to over the course of many years. They say in advertising that a consumer has to be exposed to a product 7 times. And really, when you're in Los Angeles, you're a product. And these casting directors need to see you 7 times before they're like, oh, well, he's been pleasant.
I think I can relate to that. I mean, we were in a band for a decade or more, trying to do whatever, whether we wrote good music or not. I would say it 110% fell on deaf ears. For the masses. I don't mean that our friends weren't at every show fucking rocking on, but it was the expectations were always to be the people that we idolized, and so I can imagine that 100. I mean, that's you watch film, you fall in love with theater, you fall in love with cinema, and you want to be that. You aspire to be that person on the camera. But the reality, like you say, is I can imagine is less than 0.5% of all aspiring actors will ever get the opportunity to truly do that. Yeah, that's pretty deep. I mean, this show's not, we're not trying to pounce on somebody's dreams or desires, but I think you have a lot of firsthand knowledge of that world out there, especially coming from a small town in Colorado, where it's like you took that leap, even after the years of schooling, even after fighting to do whatever you did in theater. It's like you made that leap, and it was, the reality of it was far different. I can feel, at least, than what you might have thought when you were behind the wheel driving that direction.
Totally.
Oh man. So I do
Yeah.
want to talk to you about it if you're okay with it. And just because I think it honestly can help a lot of people listening to this. I've heard you mention it before. We talked in detail about it a couple of times on another podcast, but I do. You're recently sober, and I say recently within the past few years, Mike. 10 years ago. Okay. And I say recent, right? I mean,
10 years ago.
my father's been fighting drug and alcohol abuse my entire life. So I've seen bats and, you know, I've seen him have a 10-year chip. I've seen him have 15 years. So I do say recent because I think that it's a continual situation, but I wanted to just kind of see if you could talk about that real briefly, because I think that it would be extremely hard to, and I really can't speak towards acting, but um, as you get older, I noticed in the band, you know, we would be dying. Like we played the Roxy on Hollywood Boulevard, right? And we didn't sell enough tickets, but the venue promoter was like, you know, you guys didn't get this, so we're not going to pay you tonight, but you know, you can have 3 or 4 beers, you know, each one, you know, you have a bar tab. And so it's like almost like that became commonplace. Like we're playing music, we're rock and rolling, we're drinking beers, we're doing whatever. And it's a hard environment to live in, I would think, and be sober. Um, so in your case or in your story, what drove you truly to sobriety?
Um, I had, it wasn't like a rock bottom situation. I had just done of enough like embarrassing things. I just saw Steve-O on some reel or something. He was like, I was lucky that I was a serious alcoholic. You know, like he said, like the worst thing to be would be like a middle ground alcoholic. Because and I agree with that, because you could, for years and years, you could kind of justify it. You could kind of just like let it slide. And that's kind of where it was going. And it was like really just chipping away at what I could potentially do. And there were also, like I said, the like shame and embarrassment and shitty stories were mounting. And I actually like, I tried a lot of times to quit drinking. The first most successful time, I guess, was when I went to LA the first time. I was like sober for like 6 months out there, and and then I started drinking again, and that's, you know, like, so that was 6 months. So like not even 3 months later, I left. Um, but I think the question that you're asking is like, how did I get sober? Or what is
More or
the
less, I
question
guess,
you're
just,
asking?
yeah, I mean, a little bit of how, but also like, you know, kind of why. You answered the why, but, um, you know, cause it's, it's,
Oh, yeah.
it's harder, I think, the older you get, because how do adults have fun? You know, we go to a bar, we, you know, it's like, what do we do? We'll have a barbecue. All of your friends bring over a cooler of beer. You know, it's like you constantly, and maybe this isn't the case all over the country, but you know, at least the group of friends that, you know, I have, it seems like it's commonplace. And so I just was, you know, you answered definitely the why you got sober, but how, I think, is, I personally think, having tried to stop drinking many times myself, and failing, um, how is harder than the why. I think you're met with the whys a lot, and they, like you say, they start to compound. Like I woke up in a van with vomit on the
Yeah.
seat, or, you know, I mean, that's ridiculous, but I mean, that those just stack and stack and stack, and those clearly define the whys. You're sick of that. You don't want to feel like this. The hows are harder, in my opinion, because it sometimes it takes cutting shitty people out of your life. it takes surrounding yourself with hopeful, imaginative people, people of like mind that want to do different things. And so that's what I'm more interested with you is, how did you get sober?
Sure. Uh, I I actually like when the process. I could say this in retrospect because I didn't know at the time. At the time, I just wanted to be happier. I didn't know how much alcohol was like pulling me down in that regard. Um, but I just wanted to be happier. This was after I was like in the depths of depression and like yeah. And my brother, I was on the phone with him at like 3 a.m. and he said something like, well, like I gave him every excuse about like why I couldn't make my situation better. And they're all like real reasons, but also excuses. Um, and he got fed up. He was like, well, something has to change. This is not working. Whatever you're doing is not working. So something has to change. And so, like, I forget where I was. I might have been in Fort Collins or somewhere, but I watched a TED talk called "The Happy Secret to Better Work," and I just did. It's like a meme, It was like no better than some Instagram meme, but I decided to do it, to like actually commit to doing it, and it was like these 7 or 8 things. It was like meditate, reach out to people in your network with gratitude, exercise, do these things, do them for 21 days. And I did, and it worked. Like I was way happier. I was still drinking, and I could like bear the hangovers a lot easier because I was like, who cares? Like everything's great. So it could have made things worse, honestly. But with that like new happiness and new optimism, I like was able to actually consider therapy, which in the past I'd be like, what would some fucking quack know about me and my life, But at that point, I was open to it. And I went to one session, and the doctor said something to the effect of, I went in there fully expecting him to coach me through like moderating, drinking the way that normal humans do. Um, but he was straight up like, you can't drink. You can't. You're not a person who can do that. And I would also credit my reaction to the work that I had done for those 21 days, because at any other time in my life, I might be like, you know, you don't know. Like, how do you know that? But I just accepted it. And it was easy. I can say that. Like, I think I can count on one hand the times that I was like, man, alcohol sounds great. But every encounter I had with people drinking or drunk people was just a reaffirmation of like the decision that I had made. And like people credit me with having like this inhuman willpower, but it's not the case. It's really not. Like I never felt like I had to force myself away from a
That's
drink.
pretty wild. Did you find yourself having to cut people out or find a new support system as far as a community of friends? I mean, fortunately or unfortunately?
Uh, no, no. Everyone, all of my friends who were close enough knew that it was a good thing I was not drinking with them. And they like, it was cool too, because my real friends, I have to think really far back now because it feels like really far back. Anyway, like someone who didn't know me, right, would walk up and offer me a drink, and my close friends would be like, Mike doesn't drink. Get that shit out of here. It was cool. They like rallied behind the idea of me not
That's
drinking.
good. That's
I will say that like it was a habit. It was like an easy fallback for like dating or for like hanging out with new friends. Like hey, you want to grab a drink? Yeah, like, so I wasn't able to do that anymore. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't sound like it's a bad thing. I mean, so, so outside of the 2 mile that you got coming up,
Yeah.
what, what does the future hold? I mean, I know you're back acting, and I saw this post the other day, and I film with my phone, unfortunately, because I'm still pretty broke, or I would pull up the post, but it was a comment. I couldn't read it, positive or negative, but it was something along the lines of like, I promise one day I will act and climb for a living. And my brain went towards like, who's the asshole that like had the balls to tell Mike, like, you suck, or you're not going to do this. Like, just give it up. I don't know if it was a person, but, I'm just curious, as to what drove that comment, and if that had further meaning, and what does that look like for the future?
Yeah. Well, I wish that it was an asshole. I really it's so rare that I encounter assholes who are like, you'll never make it. But like uh, they just make life so rich. But no, I don't encounter them. That comment came, I said something, I want to say, I said, mark my words, one day all that I'll do is act and climb. And that came from like I'd spent a month just acting and climbing, and I had made my wages for that month just doing those two things. Um, and it was like the best life. And I just want all of my life to look like that. And it will. You asked what it means for the future. So we go to Boston after the creek. I have an agent who's interested in Boston. I'm looking at another agent.
Yeah.
And then from Boston.
That's awesome.
Yeah. From Boston, we'll go to Los Angeles, and I'll just keep climbing.
Well, good. That's that's far better news than it being, some, rude jerk being like, sorry, Mike, I think it's time to hang up the shackles, bud. And just be like, because I have had that, I think I've had that conversation, and maybe even in my own head, of doing something for so many years, and you're like, oh, dude, is it just time? So I'm really happy to hear that wasn't a negative aspect of somebody else's life coming, like, feeding into yours. So I'm glad it was written out of positivity and hope, it seems like. So that's super cool. Um, well, Mike, I'm super happy to see that you're doing what you're doing. I think it's highly inspirational for people on multiple levels. I think that you are speaking a lot of truth about it, growing this thing that you love, whether it's climbing in general, whether it's, helping youth, or even adults get through times in their life by means of climbing, or off width specifically. I think it's really good to see you out there doing something and pushing not only yourself and and your own envelope, but also maybe even the industry envelope. That's a big task that you're trying to accomplish, and I'm glad you took to the time today to, come on and talk to us about that, because I think that, in some way, shape, or form, someone, even if it's a single person, can correlate to your message and what you've been through and what you're trying to do. Or maybe they have a very similar path. Maybe they want to be an actor and, like, speaking those tiny little volumes of absolute truth to people. Whether, I don't think that it should ever, like, destroy somebody's dreams. If they have a dream to do this, then absolutely chase after it, because life's too short not to. But I think that putting a realistic spin from personal experiences on things in life helps somebody be able to understand better what they're getting into. And when they are hit with that first big blow, or that, nope, you didn't get this audition. Nope, 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 nope. they knew that was coming, right? The writing was already there. You've paved that path for them. So I'm really glad that you came on today, and thank you for your time. And if anybody wants to reach out to you directly, if you're not opposed, I mean, do you have an email, or is there a website, or is there a Instagram handle that these folks can reach out to you, or, if they just questions about life, questions about climbing?
Totally. Yeah. My Instagram is just Mike_Largent, and that's a good way to get a hold of me. Perfect.
Yeah, and I'll absolutely, in the show notes, I'll put, if you're okay with it, I'd like to put the link for 1 Mile Wide, because I think it was I watched it actually a second time, and the first time it hit me because it was real. There's kind of this weird, like Bayfieldian type content to it, and I don't know whether you threw that in there because of the situation with Jake during the midst of this climb, or if that was the context the whole time. But the second time I watched it, it's like I got other slivers of what you were doing and accomplishing, and it was like this is such a great little fucking performance. Like I was thoroughly impressed with it, and I think that other people would like it too, and I'll absolutely put it out there. So before we get off here, the 2 mile, are you going to have a GoFundMe, or is it something people, if they hear this, if they want to donate to it, can they reach out directly to the Hive, or how do they do that?
Yeah, they can go to the Hive's website. It's just the hive.org, or they Google the Hive Durango. They'll find the Hive's website, and then there's a tab in there. It says Giving Opportunities, and I am the giving opportunity.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll absolutely put all their information in the show notes. So, Mike, thanks again, man. This has been super fun. And I don't know the last time I saw you in real life, but at one point in time, it would be nice to see you, but it sounds like you're off to the hills for a while. So when I do see you in real life, I'll give you a big hug.
Hell yeah. Good to talk, Kyle.
So absolutely, man. I appreciate you.
Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn.